All right, good morning. Let's get started. We have a very short 1 hour meeting, so we're a little bit we have a packed agenda. Before we get started, I need to remind everybody of the note well. The note well applies to this meeting and applies to any IETF meeting. If you know of any IPR that we're discussing, you have to disclose it, whether it's yours or not. Read the slides, read the documents that are listed here. If you have any questions, ask your favorite AD or workgroup chair. Reminder, we're taking minutes, so thank you very much to Dominique, Fabrice, and Xavi who are taking minutes. I believe that Xavi is also the MITECO scribe. You're not? Can you be the MITECO? Okay, you just have to connect to MITECO, and just in case there's a question related to the microphone. We're recording this meeting, and presence is logged. All of that will be published to the mailing list after the end of the meeting. So, remote participation, mailing list, meeting materials, these are links that you can consult offline. The slides are online. They've been online for a couple of hours. We've just updated 2 slides. They should appear with little bells next to the meeting materials, and that was 2-3 hours ago. So this is the agenda that we have prepared. We're now in the intro and status. We'll then go into a quick presentation about the architecture draft that Pascal will give. Malisha will have a 10-minute slot then to talk about minimal security. And in particular, I think that you'll focus on some comments that Joran made recently on the mailing list. We then have a section on dynamic scheduling with Ting Fei talking about MSF. MSF02 was published on the 11th of March. And then we have Marco, is Marco around? Thank you. Marco is there talking to us about an individual submission called robust scheduling. We then have 2 other drafts from Michael Richardson. I'm sorry, no, before that. Yeah, 1 draft from Michael Richardson on enhanced beacon, and then we have 2 updates, one on the open benchmark that Bojdar will give us. Is Bojdar around? Yes, right there. And then outcome of the hackathon that Ting Fei will give us at the very, very end. This should bring us to 12:20, which is the end of the meeting. You want to take over, Pascal?
Yes, I realized I did not update this agenda. We had some agenda bashing, and if you look at the online agenda, so maybe Thomas, when you come back, if you could display the online agenda, we actually moved Michael Richardson's presentation down to the very end of the meeting because he's having an external meeting, and he promised he would be here around noon. So Michael will be the last 10 minutes. So you see it. Yes, so you had it, it was correct. Why should it? Okay. So what happens to 6TISCH since IETF103? As you know, 6TISCH is building this whole stack of RFCs and IEEE standards so that we can prove that the stack works using real devices, interrupt tests with the ETC. And so as we do that, we mostly push work to external bodies, IEEE and 6 law, ROLL, etc. And part of those things that 6TISCH kind of promoted, pushed into other working group is this 6-law RFC 6775 update draft, which is now published as RFC 8505. So that's kind of an outcome for 6TISCH. Then Malisha will tell us, but there were meetings about OSCORE on which we have a dependency for the minimal security, and well, this progressed well in the recent days, actually, weeks and days. So very good on that side. We also have a dependency on EDOC. Sorry? It cost approved, yeah. So we're done with OSCORE. And so our dependency on OSCORE is kind of done. EDOC is not such good news. For I know it's stalled. We don't have a dependency for minimal, but we have a dependency for zero touch. That's how I understand it. And your list of, like I said, the RFC 8505 was published, but there are many others, other documents that kind of inherit from work that was done at 6TISCH to make the whole story work. And so here is the status. We don't have much time. We have only an hour, so I won't go through that. But the work at 6-law is progressing very rapidly. APND and backbone router passed to our group last call. So that's very good result. And the fragmentation work is very close to our group last call as well, I guess. For the milestones, we're late, but we are not that late. We decided to merge the terminology into the architecture. We actually pushed the architecture for publication. We had early reviews, pre-ISG reviews, I would say, and they were addressed. So now we are waiting for the full ISG set of reviews for the architecture. Zero touch is definitely late. We are looking for co-authors, and Michael will tell us about that. And minimal security passed the second workgroup last call. We got some interesting comments. Malisha will tell us. You have a question?
Suresh.
Oh, Suresh. Hello, Suresh.
Hey, Pascal, so have you converged with Elliot on the changes from the early review?
Elliot is in the room, actually. I think we did, because I saw some email, but Elliot, we have actually a slot on architecture to discuss exactly that, but, oh, no, just answer now you're here, all right?
Elliot Lear. So I did the earlier review. Hi, Suresh.
Hey, Elliot.
So I think the key here is the content of the document is very good. The only issue is whether there were a couple of issues around, do you need a glossary of terms? You had like three separate, you had a reference section in the front, a glossary, a partial glossary from other places, and another glossary. There's a certain amount of editorial that's still needed in terms of condensing that, but I think the document's very much on the right track in terms of improving readability. But it may need one more pass, to be honest.
We will address the question of terminology in the architecture right next. Okay,
right.
That's the big real question for you, Suresh. So let's move, and that's it. So if you could come up.
Thanks.
I'll just add, all of this is very much editorial and readability.
Yeah, there was one thing, Elliot, right? That has been kind of a recurring theme in similar documents is the status, right? So whether it's informational or standard. So, and you brought it up as well. So that's something I want to discuss, Pascal, if possible. I think you have something for that, but let's talk about it, okay?
Oh, okay. If you want to talk about that piece, initially the document was intended for informational, and then we did the deterministic networking architecture. And Lou Berger insisted that this one goes into standard track, and the reason was because it impacts other bodies like the IEEE. And he said, we'll get a better set of reviews if we go for standard track. So he pushed for that, and I said, hey, if that's true for .NET, then it's true for 6TISCH as well. Same reasons, we impact the IEEE 2013-4, and it's good that we get the best level of review we can. That's all. I mean, the rest is in your hands. I mean, if .NET is right, then it applies to 6TISCH. If .NET is wrong, same thing, it applies to 6TISCH. I think we're slaves to the .NET resolution.
Right.
And .NET arrives first, so.
Right. The reason I'm asking is because the DITNet doc is stuck for the exact same reason in the IESG eval, and that's why I'm bringing this up. So if you look at it, it's been stuck for like more than a month now, and if you see a lot of the IESG positions, that's like one of the key criticisms of the draft. So let's have a longer discussion about this, Pascal, and we'll try to do a resolution of that. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Right now it says Star Trek, but we need to discuss with Suresh whether it's Star Trek or informational. So the goal of this particular document is to provide an overview of what the working group has been doing over the years. So we maintain this document. Each time we made a decision, each time we added some work, each time we did something, we actually wrote it in the architecture. So if you follow the architecture since inception of the working group, you will find everything we did and how we progressed. It is really cut in two pieces, the high-level architecture for people who just need that level, and then you can go deeper into how we do and what we want to do in section 4. And part of the review I got from Carlos actually was to, and Elliot, was to reorganize that because some pieces maybe which were in section 3 belong to 4 and the other way around. So there was a bit of reshuffling after the workgroup last call into what goes in 3 and 4, but the text itself was mostly unchanged. So thanks, Carlos, thanks, Elliot. The big question that we have now, and Elliot alluded to it, is the fact, Suresh, that we decided to merge the terminology document, which was a separate RFC, quote unquote, into the architecture. And as we did that, the section, that gives basically the terminology references and the acronyms for 6 law things like 6LR, etc. As a big section, which surprised Elliot, because it has all the 6TISCH terms, also as a subsection of the terminology section. So that kind of looks huge. And so is it the right way? At least the reader finds it surprising. So Suresh, what do you think about this merge? Are we okay?
I personally like it, right? But I'm not going to force my will on the working group. But I personally do like the terminology in the same document. Maybe we can rearrange the maybe some terms for some later for the additional reading, but I do like the idea of keeping them together.
Part of that was the naming of the section. So I renamed the section. I don't know if I published with that, Elliot, but I renamed the sections according to another RFC, which was structured like this. And I gave you the hint.
So this is Elliot again. So my comments in the review, again, this is all readability, okay? And I don't think we should spend, I encourage people not to spend too much time in this room worrying about readability. But the issue was that terms are being defined in the upfront. They were being, in some cases, redefined in line in the text, leading to slight conflicts. And Pascal cleaned that up in the review, by the way, which was good. And then there was information pulled in from another document, which was in a separate section. And all I was going to suggest is it's okay to elide this section. The other point I was going to make was the references that were listed up front that's incongruent with how we do RFCs. References go in the back. Right?
Yeah, but the reference that are on the top are the terminology reference. I mean, if you want to understand the text below, you need to read those terminology documents. So it's not the full set of reference, it was just the terminology docs, like the one from Karsten, etc., the ones from 6 Law. So it was external terminology, it was not the rest of the references.
Yeah, people are expected to chase down references in the same way throughout our series. So I view that as just a consistency thing. And truth be told, I'm not going to stand on my head on any of this, right? The working group can just go whatever direction it's going to go. As an external person who's just reading the document for the first time, that I found, I was immediately thinking when I read the document that, oh my God, in order to understand any of this, I have to go read all of these other documents. If that's the intent, okay. If that's not the intent, that is the message you left with me, though.
And the goal was to say there is terminology in those documents that I won't repeat in my documents, so the links are there, but usually you don't read through. But I mean, I would like other feedback from other readers. That would be perfect, because I understand the question, but I don't know really how to resolve it. So if other readers come to us just on this section two, I guess, terminology and give some hints about how to fix.
So I
idiots.
have a suggestion, Pascal and Elliot, right? So what you can do is like you have the list of terms, right? So as long as all the references are covered in the normative references, I don't think you have to do anything more. And so I understand Elliot's confusion, and I kind of agree with him. So if you just make sure that like the terms that you're using from the other documents are listed in the terminology, I think we should be okay. Unless you want to know all the terminology, at which point, like if it's normative references, then people have to hunt it down anyway.
So we're running out of time in this
Yes.
slot. So what is the resolution? What is your next step, Pascal?
I understand from Suraj, if I understand well what Suraj told me, because I'm not 100% sure. So if I may quote, I'm going to remove the external references from the terminology section and try to extract the terms that are needed from there and include them in our terminology. Is it the solution, Suraj? Is it what
Correct.
you said?
Like and with the reference, with the actual reference, it's like you should say like, okay, like for example, if you want to say PIO is defined in RFC 4861 directly in the terminology section instead of putting in another reference section, because that's what threw off Elliot.
Okay.
Okay. So we can discuss this on the list.
Okay.
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 Thanks.
Yeah, that's clear, and let's do that.
That's
discuss on the
actionable.
list. Thanks, Suresh. Okay, let's
And
move
we're all
on.
set. So
I'm sorry, I have to
minimal?
be like really cautious with time. Next item on the agenda is Malisha. Let me swap slides here. Giving us an update about. Oops, sorry. All right.
Okay, so I have a 10 or so slides, but I'll focus on the major issue that was brought up by Joran last night on the list. Essentially, we published 09 after the IETF 103 meeting in Bangkok. Then we had a second working group last call sometime early March, which ended, and we received one review from Joran Salander, which arrived yesterday. Outlining one more issue that seems to be pending. So this will be the goal of my presentation today, but essentially to just give a quick summary of the changes in 09 and this issue that Joran brought up. As a side note, ISG finally approved OSCORE, so we are good to go in terms of minimal security as we have a heavy dependency there. So in terms of updates in 09, we removed the network identifier from join response in order to simplify the structure. Now we require that the 6LBR pledge be provisioned by the network identifier before it attempts to join using constrained join protocol with the so essentially, this is just a deployment requirement. We added a parameter called the join rate that is used by the JRC to control the emission of basically to control the start and stop of the join process in the network. And it is also used as a bandwidth cap on COAP as it directly configures the probing rate of COAP. We clarified the usage of the blacklist parameter, just specifying covering suborder cases that were missing previously. How do you essentially remove the blacklist from a given pledge from the JRC? So now I'll go through the working group last comments. So the first two slides are just some minor comments that I will really quickly cover. Essentially, Joran outlined some nits in the text. The first one was on one sentence that was regarding the increment of the sequence numbers when a given pledge joins two different networks. So essentially, there used to be a sentence saying that that sequence numbers obviously must be incremented as we want to avoid nonce reuse. So we're just going to rephrase this to make it more general and just to adhere to the Archor spec. Then the second comment was on also the NIT on the use of OSCORE. So we have a proposed resolution that was here brought by Joran, which I will take into consideration for the next version. And yes, then OSCORE had an update regarding the update of sequence numbers and their storage in persistent memory. So right now we need to update the reference, and also to essentially in terms of minimal security, we're just piggybacking on OSCORE spec, relying on section on Appendix B11. So now I'll go with the issue that Joran outlined. This issue was originally brought up by Jim Schad during the first working group last call, and the scenario that we are considering is that there is a failure event of the JRC, in which case the JRC loses all the mutable parameters that can be stored on disk, that can be stored in data memory. But it still has access to the database containing the pre-shared keys of the different pledges. So now in the current text we mandate that the administrator forces all the networks that are managed by this JRC to rejoin, and after that the nodes rejoin with the new JRC. The new nodes had preserved the mutable context parameters, so there is no non-zero use. But Joran outlined a problem with this procedure in terms of a possible replay attack on the JRC, where the attacker could essentially replay one of the early joins. So this is what I will show in the following. So essentially, what you see on the top is pledge and the JRC. So there is the join request, join response exchange with sequence number and key. Essentially, the nonce that is used here is N, and the key used for encryption is the key of the pledge. The response is sent using the same sequence number, but under a different key. So all of this is fine. And then after that, after the join, the pledge becomes a join node. There are several possible parameter update requests coming from the JRC to the pledge, incrementing the sequence number M on the side of the JRC that pledge keeps track in order to detect replays. So now there is this event of the JRC failure that you see on the right. And essentially, as I said, PSK, the assumption is that pre-shared keys, the database of pre-shared keys is preserved, but that the mutable parameters like sequence numbers are lost. And now, so essentially, the JRC at this stage does not have the sequence number, nor the replay window that it should accept on the behalf of the pledge. So what can happen is that the attacker here can replay the initial join request, send it to the JRC. If the JRC accepts it, and according with the current text, there is no way of JRC detecting that this would be a replay. There would be JRC would respond, and this would result in a nonce reuse on the join response packet, essentially losing the confidentiality property of the underlying cipher. So this is the issue that was outlined by Joran. We have a couple of ways forward. And with the latest updates to the OSCORE spec, what was introduced in OSCORE is an Appendix B.2, which specifies a challenge response-based mechanism for key exchange based on a pre-shared key that complements OSCORE, that we can use in order to trigger this mechanism at the JRC by knowing that there was a failure event in order to rekey the context. So now, in terms of the added overhead, the communication overhead, this adds one additional round trip, only in case of the JRC failure event. And it results in a new context being derived at the JRC and the pledge, so that they can consequently start using the sequence numbers. They can reset the sequence numbers to 0. Thomas, did you have a question? Okay. Yeah, so I mean, this is all specified in OSCORE, which is an advantage that got approved. So it would be very easy in terms of the spec in 6TISCH. The only downside we have identified so far is that if we were to use this mechanism of OSCORE, we would no longer be compatible with the there would no longer be the lightweight implementation option that is currently identified in Appendix B of minimal security. Just as a reminder, this lightweight implementation option allows us to get away without the implementations of SHA and HKDF in firmware, and by deriving the session keys at provisioning time of the pledge. And essentially what pledge ends up with is the session keys provisioned and that it uses. So now if we were to use this challenge response mechanism in Appendix B2 of OSCORE, essentially we would need the HKDF implementation in firmware. The second way forward that we discussed yesterday in a side meeting is essentially the design of a custom sequence number resynchronization mechanism, but this would be something that is custom for 6TISCH and that would be defined in minimal security. Again, we would have the additional round trip only in the JRC case, and if we were to succeed with this, this would be compatible with the lightweight implementation option, but this is not fully baked yet, and this would require more security review. And then the third option, just as a question to the working group, is whether this scenario of partial JRC failure is realistic enough to be considered, and if we still agree that this is something that we should address in the specification. So those are all the slides, so I welcome any questions from the working group.
Thomas Otene, as contributor. So from what you're saying, it looks like option 2 is not, doesn't present enough advantages over 1 or 3, and so from the 3 options that you present, it looks like you're saying 1 or 3 are realistic, 2 is not that realistic. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, so option 2 would require a bit of more crypto work in minimal security, and this of course can introduce delays in terms of the document. Yeah. And it would be custom to 6TISCH. So this would be a procedure that is specific to the 6TISCH use of OSCORE.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if about option 3 and 1, option 3, we're basically saying if this happens, if the JRC loses for some reason the mutable parameters of its solution, the modes are bricked. I mean, you have to go and re-provision PSKs.
Yes, essentially.
That's
yes.
what we're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
And and then in option 1, we have a mechanism that's already defined in OSCORE.
That's correct.
Which allows us to recover from that at the additional cost of having a little bit of code inside the mode, in particular HKDF and today SHA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so the additional code means larger footprint and larger time to update over the air things. So there's 2 questions that I have. Can we make option 1 how do you say that, optional, so that in case you have that implemented, you can recover, otherwise you're just it doesn't work. And the second question is, we had the discussion just before, do we need SHA-1 or can we do something with HKDF around AES rather than SHA-1? And what kind of effort are we looking at?
Yeah, so in terms of the first question, essentially, I think we could, this would boil down to saying, in case your firmware is deployed without the challenge response mechanism, go re-provision all your devices, full stop. This is it. If it happens that your firmware has the HKDF and the whole HKDF implemented, yes, you can run this protocol. So I think we are still, in terms of interoperability, there's no problem with. For question 2 for HKDF, so currently the default HKDF of OSCORE is based on SHA. I was made aware by the OSCOR authors that essentially we can use an algorithm that is defined in COSI, where HKDF relies on the AES as on the hash function based on AES, and this the changes required would essentially just be referencing an algorithm in another spec. So one sentence.
Yeah, I was just going to say what you said, Malisha. This is your answer, that I mean, the AES based HKDFs are already defined. So they're in table 12 of RFC 8152.
Peter van der Stok, probably a stupid suggestion. Why don't you ask at restart of all the known networks what the current sequence number is and use the largest one for everybody?
I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
Ask all the participants that you contacted what the last sequence number is, and use the highest number for everybody.
This is option number 2.
Oh, sorry.
So, yes, this is option number 2. We already have a sort of this mechanism implemented, but we would need to redesign it, to refine it to cover this new attack that Yoram brought up. But this is option number 2 essentially, and it would mean a custom mechanism in the spec.
Yeah, so these are thanks a million, Joran, for raising this. Thanks, Malisha, for reacting so quick. This is something that's not 24 hours old. So let's continue the discussion on the mailing list. I think that we have progressed a little bit in understanding options 1, 2, and 3. And that, you know, I understand as a chair that this is not redesigning the full world, but it is referencing different things. So I'm happy from that point of view. And I'm happy to hear that OSCOR, or that we have some HKDF wrappers around AES as well, which would basically simplify the code.
In terms of if we go with option 1, I suppose, yeah.
If we go with option 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I coordinate. Thanks, Ingve, for agreeing to give 5 of your minutes to Malisha. I think it was necessary. So the next item is on MSF, the minimal scheduling function. I think Ingve has an update about the minimal scheduling function 2.
Yep.
Yep, go for it.
Hi everyone, I'm Tengfei Chang from INRA Paris. I was I'm the one of the author of the MSF draft. And last time in the Bangkok, we published the MSF version 01, and before this IETF meeting, we published the version 2, and I'm going to update that. The main update from this version is we introduced a shared and non-shared autonomous cell concept, and also we resolved the pending issues listed in the previous version and do a overall revise. And after that, I will give an evaluation of the MSF performance. So for the non-shared, for this MSF version 02, it introduced the non-shared and shared autonomous cells. I will use an example to introduce how it works. So for in the figures from the left side, there are 4 nodes, and the different on the right side is the slot frame of each node, and the blue I'll call it like a box. A blue box will be one of the autonomous cells, which is which is installed according to the node's its own address. So this cell is installed once the mode is boot up. And then the node 2 start to trying to select node 1 as a JP or a parent to transmit a join request or 6B request. And then it will getting the address from the node 1 and install another autonomous cells, which is shared, and to transmit this packet. So the node 1 will using the same cell to transmit the join response and or 6 response back to the cell. And later, if the node 3 and node 4 are trying to join to node 2 as a parents or as a join proxy. Those two nodes will install the autonomous shared cells according to the node address of node 2. And because this cell is shared, so only one of the packet from either node 3 or node 4 arrives at node 2, and then node 2 will reply the join response or 6 response to one of the nodes. And later another node will try again because it's an autonomous shared cell. And hence it will finish this join process or the 6P transaction process. So there's a list of pending issues from the previous version, and this is the issues we already resolved. Most of them are resolved, and there are 3 listing there. But the main discussion is already in mailing list. But I will focus on the following comments, which is from Yach, who is giving the comment on the version 2. I will talk about this more. So the first issue is the security issue on the neighbor caching during join process. This means if a node trying to join to a join proxy, and the join proxy will install those neighbor entry into its neighbor cache, which is defined in the minimal security. But this will introduce an issue if there's a node trying to fake in different UI addresses and to fill up the neighbor caching, and there's another pledge trying to join, and it cannot join because it's full of the neighbor cache. So yes, I saw a questioner.
Yeah, so just comment on that. This is Mali Shortrange from India. So just to comment on that on minimal security, there is a network configuration section basically that says that gives a recommendation that we should keep separate entries for insecure and secure entries, such that if there is an attack, only the basically the insecure entries do not influence, do not flood over to the secure to the nodes already that are already in the network. Yeah, so I think this text already covers this, and we might just reference the section of minimal security.
Yeah. The solution here is more like we want to record the neighbor in the entry. Yeah, that's.
Yasuki Tanaka, India. Yeah, I agree with Marisha. So you can find a link to the section of the secure minimal security architecture framework. But my comment is the join request would fill up the schedule, the memory for the schedule, the cells. So we may need to have some comment on the security consideration section about how to prevent filling up the schedule, the slot frame.
But right now on the join proxy side, it actually didn't install any autonomous cells during the join process.
Yeah, but the current draft said if you have the neighbor entry, if you have the new neighbor entry, you must install the autonomous shell cell.
I see. Okay, this is from another place in draft.
So just to make Mali Shortrange from India, just to make this clear, you are essentially saying that the pledge, that this text is generic enough that the pledge can be recognized just as another neighbor and added as the. Okay, I see your point. Okay, this is a matter of clarification in the text then.
Yeah, I misgenerated the question. Yeah. Thanks, Yash, for clarifying. And so the second issue is a non-trust packet should be counted on for adapting. Yeah, I agree with that. And the broadcast packet rule should implementation specific. So the solution is either we remove them or we change the term recommend must by should. So this is under discussion. And so there's no, and another one is unclear for how we implement the trigger timer with the rate limiting. I think we will just change remove with rate limiting, just using the trigger timer for DIO. And yeah, So there are other issues, and those actually talk is already in the mailing list. So we'll discuss later. And for the evaluation, we implemented this MSF within OpenWSM project, and we released a new release, which is implemented the version 2. And we deployed the network through one of the building from INRIA Paris, and with the 40 nodes. And this is the result. And we are running this experiments for 2 hours, and each node are transmitting 1 packet per minute, and we got a average 96.4% PDR, which is it's still developing. We will trying to push more higher PDR with this, and this is the performance of the cell usage. So you can most of the nodes actually is controlled between 25% and 75% percentage. And for the lowest one is have the low traffic is kind of a low cell usage, and for the highest one you can see the cell usage are changing over time, but it's overall is controlled within this 75% and 25%, which is the threshold parameter we configured when using MSF. So call for adoption is a wrong term there. Yeah, so next step we'll discussing the question from the mailing list and publish the next version. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the meantime, Yacht, you have sent, I don't know where Yacht is, yeah. You have sent an email to the mailing list indicating that the 6-TISCH simulator also implements this, and where you configure, you confirm those numbers, only the PDR being at 100%. So that's, yeah, the 96% is because of essentially firmware bugs. So thank you, Yacht. How to progress this? So this has been, thanks for evaluating this. We have 2 implementations that they use it. It's great. I propose that you guys integrate the comments, push the next version, and that next version should be close to ready for workgroup last call. I think it's too early to do it now because of the comments, but this thing is running.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's push those updates in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll launch a workgroup last call once it's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And comments.
Yes, what's nice usually is to find 1-2 persons in the room who are ready to do an early review of the document. So it would be great that when Tengfei pushes the document, 1 or 2 persons are in the room are ready to read it right away and give pre-workgroup last call comments or something. Are there voluntaries in the room who would just do that? Yach, maybe? Another? Okay, so Thomas and Yach will review the document as soon as you push it, and Fabrice, and then if they are happy, then we'll launch the workgroup last call. Okay? Otherwise, we just respin a rapid version, and we'll start the workgroup last call.
Hi, Marco Tiroca from RISE. I'm going to give you some quick update on this draft about robust scheduling for selective jamming in 6-TISCH networks. Just to recap, the document in fact presents an attack and a solution against that. The attack essentially is about targeting a number of nodes in the network, and in a first step, once and for all, derive their full communication pattern, and after that starts actually jamming their traffic that can be essentially entirely killed with full effectiveness in a stealthy way and low power way, of course. More on that later on the benefits. And then we propose a solution against this so that all the nodes in the network, of course, in a consistent way, pseudo-randomly shuffle the cells they use for communication at each slot frame, regardless the original schedule they started from, produced with whatever schedule we are agnostic about that here. And nice thing is that in order to do that, the network nodes engage only local computation, so there's no additional communication they have to take for this. The result, of course, is a practical new schedule to consider for communication, which is still collision-free, consistent, and now it's also unpredictable for the adversary. So the original attack is neutralized. This was firstly presented in Bangkok, and we got some feedback, comments, requests for clarification. So the updates are mostly about that, in fact. We clarified better the attack importance. This is about tearing down traffic of selected nodes in the network. The adversary can do that, so essentially minimizing the exposure and hence the risk to be detected compared to alternative forms of jamming. It's also highly efficient at the same time, which means it can even be carried out with a battery-powered device in principle. And if you consider all this, this is much convenient to do in this way compared to, and otherwise always possible, of course, wideband constant jamming that would increase consumption and risk of detection. We better clarified, well, together with this, I can say the adversary model, the adversary is external, can jam one or more network nodes in the same attack execution, so to say. And just to clarify, this is about targeting the exact traffic or of selected nodes in the network, not the network as a whole. Otherwise, of course, if that's the final goal, it's just more convenient to go for a whole wideband jamming. We clarified the main solution limitation, I would say, so that this is about protecting against selective jamming traffic occurring in slot frames where data traffic happens. So we cannot apply the same principle on slot frames that are essentially used to support a joining process to a minimal cell or other kind of rendezvous cells. So if we shuffle cells there too, of course, the joining process would become, well, not unreliable, but for sure less deterministic, and you cannot really think more of upper bounds for joining them. So this is fine to apply to slot frames for data traffic, not really for slot frames involved in the joining process, meaning that the same attack is still possible, of course, against the join process as a whole. And as a final update, we already had in the previous version that the two keys that are practically used for local computation on the network nodes to alter their cell usage have to be provided to them before they join the network. And a possible way to do that, of course, is using the minimal security framework, practically putting them in the join response. In version 0 of the draft, we were aligned to the version of the minimal security framework before our submission. So now this is aligned to the current format of the join response. It's essentially about adding 2 more parameters in the configuration object, the key set, because in general there are 2, but there's a corner case where it can be 1, and the actual permutation cipher to use with the keys to perform the shuffling. And of course, we describe how to perform error handling in case there are some mismatching key format numbers and so on. So to summarize, this was about taking into account the comments and feedback got after Bangkok. We think we addressed all of them in this update. And of course, we would like to see document proceeding, for which definitely we need reviews from the group. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So reviews is what you were asking for, yeah, which makes sense. Can people raise their hands if they... So who has read this draft? Right, so yeah, a little less than 10 people. Who is willing to review this in the next month? So let's write down in the minutes. We have Xavi, Tengfei, Michael, and Pascal. So please provide to the mailing list a review of the draft in the next month. Is that okay for you?
Yes, indeed.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're, as you have seen, if you watch your watch, we're late. So what I propose we do is we proceed with the open benchmark presentation, and then I propose that we swap and leave the, and then talk about the outcome of the hackathon last in case we're running out of time. Thank you for agreeing to swap. So next.
Is this okay? Nice.
Marcia, you had some? Okay. Yeah, all yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Božidar Skrbić from University of Montenegro, and together with Malisha Vucinic and Professor Enis Kočan, we are working on development of benchmarking platform for 6TISCH as part of SODA project of University of Montenegro. Now, first of all, what was the motivation behind SODA? So the first reason is that there are many academic papers which propose a 6TISCH implementation, but fail to give a comprehensive benchmark and a general overview in a real-world driven scenario. The second reason is that the standards are always evolving, and it is important that we have a constant performance evaluation. And the third reason is that it is also essential that we have a reliable tool for comparing two implementations with one another, or to compare state-of-the-art implementation with a new implementation. Now, how do we aim to achieve this? By following these three sets of rules. The first rule is that all the experimentation should be based on test scenarios which are defined in RFCs and which try to mimic the real-world environment, a real use case. The second principle is that we define the performance of a firmware as a set of key performance indicators which are strictly defined. And the third principle is that the conditions and the environments in which we perform the experiment, namely the configuration of the test beds, should mimic the real-world environment as closely as possible. Now, the means of access to the platform, apart from a GUI, which is meant for human users, is also another mean of access is a RESTful API, which aims for the machine users so that we can use Open Benchmark for automated testers, continuous integration, nightly builds, and so on and so on. Now, here are some of the key performance indicators which we have defined and which should be used as the indicator for the evaluation of the firmware performance. And this is a simplified schematics of the entire system. So the core of the platform essentially reserves the resources on a selected testbed, deploys the firmware to all the nodes, the firmware which is provided by the user, and orchestrates the actions on the testbed and on the nodes. The orchestration is nothing else but sending commands to each and every node in particular time instances, defining how that node should behave. Upon every executed action on the node, event is emitted back to the Open Benchmark platform, which is then used as raw data, which are then used as raw data for calculating KPIs, which are then forwarded to the user as the experiment results. This is the current work in progress. So we have implemented these three scenarios, so home automation, building automation, and industrial monitoring. And we're currently working on integration, or have already integrated these three testbeds. So they are IoT Lab in Sapley, it's WILabT in Ghent, and Open Testbed in Paris, which is developed within INRIA. And for the end, this is some sneak peek at the GUI of the current version. It's still a work in progress, as I said, but this should give you an insight into what the GUI of the first stable release should look like. So that's essentially all. Thank you very much. If you have any comments and questions, please ask.
So thank you so much for the presentation. We don't have time to take questions now, but if you have any questions, your names are on the slide.
Yes, sure.
I want to highlight the importance of this work and kind of very, very cool that you're able to do real world benchmarking and repeatable and some kind of continuous integration of benchmarking on 6TISCH. Very, very cool. Thanks for that. Thanks for coming and presenting this. As per our little switch, next on is Michael, and
I didn't send you a second set of slides. There's no second set of slides. Hi, so I'll just give you an update on two documents. One is the zero-touch join. The summary is there's not a lot of change since even Montreal. But the goal of this document always was to use protocols and other things defined in other parts of the IETF and not do anything that we really needed. So the update to this working group is really to understand that the core Brewski document has passed working group last call, had 3 very large reviews, which took literally 6 months of several days a week to deal with them. That's all happened. It's gone up to Ignis to get to the ISG. The constrained voucher document was adopted since we last spoke. It's received significant work. Includes constrained Brewski, and is probably going to enter a working group last call tomorrow. The ESD COAP document, which we also depend upon, it was in a working group last call. It's over, but the data tracker says it's still underway, but it's in fact over. If you want to run all this over DTLS, and we actually are making it run over DTLS on 15.4, but not 6TISCH, in another room, not associated with the IETF today and tomorrow, and with the thread group and these people. That's all happens. But if you want to use a more constrained key management protocol, if you want ad hoc, for instance, we still don't have a home for that. This has been very difficult. We've been through a sec patch, sec dispatch, virtual interim. Was that 2 weeks ago, Melissa? 2 weeks ago? Yeah, about 2 weeks ago. And I don't know what the results are. I don't think that anyone knows at this point, but there is some progress, some reasonable progress happening on getting that. So those are the kind of technology pieces that secure zero-touch join require us to do. Our document, I've refreshed it in October. Really, that was just, reposted. Lost a co-author last summer, just didn't have time. Looking for help, and essentially we need to go through the document again and essentially remove text. The removing text essentially means because that text is now moved to another document which is in a much more mature state. That's the kind of architecture of documents that we have had. That document slide's been in front of you before. And then I'll just mention the other document is Enhanced Beacon. So I've received some reviews on that from Pascal. Thank you very much. Have posted a new document in O2 on that. I think that as a working group, we have pretty much reached consensus that the contents of the Enhanced Beacon is unchanged. The real question is how much introductory text do we need to talk about why we are using an Enhanced Beacon, why we have so limited broadcasts, and that's really to explain it to people not in this room why it is that we're doing this. So, Melissa, did you have a question quickly?
Well, most short change from in there. I just had a comment about removing text from zero touch. I think we're currently blocked with the ad hoc status, and we eventually need to decide if we're going to go the ad hoc way or the TLS way, and we need the progress on the in the security area, I suppose.
So just to add to that, in the other room, which is where I've been all morning, we're doing DTLS and over 15.4, and it's not easy. The packets are too big. They take too long. The retransmit timers mean that unless you deal with that right, you actually get retransmits before the original set of packets even arrived. So there's a bunch of things to tweak and get right for that, and it's not trivial. Making that stuff smaller really will help.
So yeah, I mean, we had this discussion in Prague. I think it was 2 years ago when.
2 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
And we still don't have a resolution. So I think it would be useful for us as a working group to have some support, maybe from the ADs and also from the security, from the security area to progress on this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was literally 2 years ago here. We did interop on ad hoc, right, in another room. Joran.
Yeah, sure. Joran Selander. So I don't know the results from sec dispatch yet on ad hoc, but there is supposed to be write-up coming out soon.
Okay.
So hopefully there should be news about where to.
Okay, so we should make sure it passes through this group for comment.
Okay.
To that.
Agreed.
That's all I have.
For the enhanced beacon, Michael, what I would like to see is maybe another review from the room and then launch workgroup last call. I mean,
yeah.
That's why I did my review, so we can do workgroup last call.
Diego is going to do my co-author is going to do some of the introductory text. I think the working group needs to decide if the introductory text needs to be this big, everyone understands about broadcasts, or this big to explain to the rest of the world why we have issues about broadcasts.
Actually, this work will be useful for role, right?
Yeah.
And so the role document, being the user, will clarify just by its existence why this is needed, because role will use it. So I don't think you need to write a book here.
Okay, I'm just concerned about Gen Art review or someone, comes along and goes, well, what's the problem? Right? Because the problem is in some ways not very well defined in the document, because we all understand the problem, and that's why I said, well, look, there's some more text that maybe is needed. But if we don't really want to put that in, I don't want to put it in. It's texted, right, and maintained.
I think if the role document, explains what it's doing, if the question comes from the review, just point on the role document and say, yes.
Okay, but I wrote the role document too, so I still got to write some text, is what I heard. Just not in this document.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
And not too much in the role, because it's kind of self. Yeah, Catherine?
Yeah, so in the last 60 seconds, thank you, Dick Face. A quick update about the hackathon that took place this weekend. Click.
Yeah. So my teammates, Manisha and I attended the hackathon from 2 days ago. Oh, I want to give the message later, but it shows up. Okay, there's 416 people attending this hackathon, so it's the largest hackathon ever. And here are some pictures in the middle. This is the SIG-TISCH OpenWSN table, and right top corner is my teammates. Malaysia is working hard there. So what we plan to do during the hackathon is one is we're using OpenWSN project to optimize the implementation of MSF, and another one is Malaysia is working on the benchmark, which is a benchmark the performance of SIG-TISCH. So this is what we have done after the hackathon. So from the benchmarking part, the benchmark server is able to kind of communicate with the modes over test bed, such as set the TX power, set DAG routes, and the others. And on the MSF side, we trying to optimize the MSF and also create a live demo, which is available online. So with this link, everyone can access it. And the interface looks like this. It has end-to-end latency and end-to-end reliability and the cell usage for MSF. You can access this link and see it's lively actually right now. Yeah, so it's a pretty cool hackathon. Here are some links if you want more details about where the code and how this progresses. You can access the links. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tengfei. So click on the link and you'll be able to see that little dashboard and see a live network running SIG-TISCH now. That's it for our time. We don't have time to take any more questions. Let's reconvene on the mailing list. Thank you so much. So please make sure that you have signed the blue sheets. There's a blue sheet at the table there as you walk out if you haven't. Thank you.